We're 10% of the population in this country. 10%. That's a whole heap, you know. We're 10%.
More than 260,000 Jamaicans have physical, intellectual or sensory disabilities. Many of them regularly encounter prejudicial social, economic and physical barriers, preventing them access to various services, ultimately denying them of their basic human rights. Quite often, this exclusion happens because the general populace, including some family members, caregivers and service providers, do not fully understand the special needs of this group of persons. As a result, attitudes towards persons with disabilities are largely based on assumptions. Many are inclined to be sorry for them, to be overprotective, and at the other extreme, there are those who are simply insensitive and uncaring.
People tease me sometimes and say, oh, you're deaf, you're dumb, you're dummy, you can't talk, you can't hear. Sometimes I get angry, I just ignore them.
When people tease me and behave and mock, and even when we're on the bus, the special bus, you see people jeer and behave. I don't even penny that anymore. Because you know why? Persons are not being born anymore with disabilities. It's been acquired mostly now. And so you tease me fine. You're 12 o'clock coming.
Such negative stance is usually based on ignorance of the fact that persons with disabilities, like everyone else, are emotional beings with healthy desires, dreams and aspirations. And instead of pity and insensitivity, most of them would rather a chance to prove that they are worthwhile human beings who can make valuable contributions to society.
I don't want to depend on anybody.
I want to be my own woman.
Sharmali, a very fashion-conscious and outgoing UWI history major, navigates her way quite independently in familiar surroundings.
I know all the places on campus I need to know. I know them. I know all the food places. I know all the classes. I'm in the Faculty of Humanities and Education. Any class in humanities they need to find, just call.
Nikisha is a basic school teacher. She passed her common entrance exams for Arden High, but was placed at Mona High because of her physical disability.
Honestly, I know it would have been a better challenge going to Arden than opposed to Mona, because Arden is a more known school, recognized school than Mona. But through it all, I'm grateful that I have life, I have intelligence. And, no, I still can do a lot more than probably other persons can.
Meet Kamar Grove, computer technician with the Jamaica Association for the Deaf. He's an ardent, independent learner, but he eagerly shares his knowledge with others.
I want to be independent, do my own thing. Right now, if a person treats me like a child, I don't feel like I'm independent. So I want to be independent and do my own thing. I have a job, my own money, everything. I'm preparing for the future. So no more depending on mommy. Now I'm an adult.
The many barriers which exclude persons with disabilities from integrating into the wider society rob them of their dignity and keep them disadvantaged. Most of them are unemployed and fall below the poverty line. Jamaica has had a national policy for persons with disabilities since 2000. As a further expression of commitment, Jamaica was the first country to ratify and sign the United Nations Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities in 2007.
Since we have ratified the convention, we began working in earnest to develop a new legislation, which we are currently in the 9th draft, looking at protecting the rights of persons with disabilities.
An important issue in seeking to address the rights of persons with disabilities is understanding both the common and specific sets of needs within the sector. Persons with severe intellectual disabilities present peculiar challenges which service providers need to be sensitive to, as highlighted by Maureen Weber, mother and advocate.
When you have a child who he or she is 17, non-verbal, and and with a severe disability, you as the parent and or the primary caregiver, you in effect carry that disability with you. And therefore, in a case where he is nonverbal, you have to be even more the advocate. Now, when you look at my son as him, there's no indication in Brian's face of a person with a disability. I go to the store with my son. I don't use the stick at all times, obviously. But if I have Brian with me, I park in the space. Somebody will say to me, but he's not in a wheelchair. He don't have a disability. Nobody understands that Brian, who, if you carry 4 bags of grocery and holding Brian, he might let go of your hand and brace across the street. So therefore, having him as close as possible to this point of entry and exit is important. It takes 2 people to brush his teeth. Hold him, 1 brush his teeth. That's our reality. I do find a dentist who would be willing to put him to sleep once a year so his teeth can be properly cleaned and checked. Because you can't open Brian's mouth unless he will bite and devour your hand and pills. So it's even where dentists deal with our children, they have different dental needs because they have different eating habits. They might drool, they might have stuff collecting where it's easier for them to actually get the kids. We need dentists who understand that. We need nutritionists who can explain certain foods trigger certain behaviors, how our children behave. All right? Therefore, we need people who understand how to do that as well. So it's a whole learning, and it's a whole other business activity. It's not a business activity, it's a whole other mindset that we have to add. But again, we're 10%, so I think we're entitled to that 10% share of your time on your pie.
Most deaf and blind persons have normal intelligence, but a common mistake that service providers make is to assume that these persons cannot understand or that the blind cannot hear well. This is a sore point that persons with sensory disabilities find quite annoying. Head of the Jamaica Association for the Deaf, Iris Suter, pinpoints communication needs as being the most critical for the deaf.
We want to ensure that deaf persons are able to get quality information, accurate information, not just superficial information, but they need to have the kind of access to communication in various situations that allow them to be able to make informed decisions. And then there is the issue of communicating in the first language of deaf persons. Jamaican Sign Language is their first language. And while there are some members of the community who can learn adequately through English or distill information adequately through English, the reality is that our first language is the language in which we think and reason and are able to come to sound decision making. So the presentation of information to this particular population must take into consideration the issue of using Jamaican Sign Language.
Physical disabilities may be more easily detected, and there appears to be a better understanding of some of the structural modifications that should be made to accommodate persons who fall in this category, but quite often the attempts at accommodating this group do not match the required need. All persons with disabilities have the right to access the general services that the public accesses, including health, education, national insurance, benefits and programs such as PATH. In addition, persons registered with the Jamaica Council for Persons with Disabilities can access income tax exemption if employed, assistance in purchasing certain things like eyeglasses and hearing aids, lower than the usual loan interest rates for NHT schemes, parking sticker to allow access to parking space designated for persons with disabilities, and economic grants through the Ministry of Social Security to start an enterprise. But the vast majority of persons with disabilities cannot take advantage of these benefits simply because they haven't yet taken the first step, that is, admitting that they themselves or members of their family have a disability. Only about 8,000 of the estimated 260,000 persons with disabilities are registered. According to Christine Hendricks, social worker at the Jamaica Council for Persons with Disabilities, the non-registration is highest among those persons with intellectual disabilities.
A lot of family members and caregivers keep these persons with disabilities at home, and even when the national census is being taken, the person with disabilities may be there, but they do not acknowledge that they are there, so they are not counted. Now, if a person with a disability is not counted as a part of the nation's population, then the government cannot adequately provide for such persons.
The single largest benefit of disclosure is liberating yourself and the family unit. The telling or the opening up is the liberation first and foremost. Before you get to any material benefits, once you have sort of come to peace with this is it, I have a child, a young adult with a disability, or I myself am a person with a disability, then it's like you free yourself for the opportunities. You no longer, you take away what you remove the stigma that society has put on you about being different.
Get over the fear, get over feeling ashamed, and let society know that, hey, I'm here and I'm valuable and I am going to participate in everything that is there, and once you're in my face, then I will have to come to some measure of acceptance. Because the truth is, even though there may be a Disability Act, you cannot legislate people's attitude.
In pursuit of that goal to improve the quality of life for persons with disabilities, the Government of Jamaica has partnered with non-governmental organizations and the United Nations Population Fund, UNFPA, on a number of projects over the years.
One such project that seeks to positively impact the quality of life for persons with disabilities is the GOJ EU-UNFPA Joint Program on Sexual and Reproductive Health.
Reproductive health refers to a state of complete physical, mental and social well-being in all matters relating to the reproductive system. Issues include specific areas like sexual development, sexuality, sexual health, sexual abuse, family planning, pregnancy, sexually transmitted infections including HIV/AIDS, and sexual and reproductive health (SRH) rights. Research indicates that persons with disabilities are as likely as persons without disabilities to be sexually active. Persons with disabilities are up to 3 times more likely to be victims of physical